social work, overcoming obstacles and achieving success in large organizations. We'll start the introductions with Scott Linnebarger, who is the Senior Director of Multi-Channel Content Marketing for the Cleveland Clinic. Now, this challenges him to efficiently and effectively deliver content and engage with audiences in a multi-channel communications world. He balances website management, search engine marketing, mobile marketing, social media marketing, and email newsletter strategy, as well as producing content for offline marketing communications. Scott employs 25 years of experience in this task with the goal of growing Cleveland Clinic's brand and attracting new patients. The panelists, the third one down is Kelly Pirro, works for corporate communications for Diebold Incorporated, leading social media strategy, implementation, and monitoring for that company. She focuses on reputation management and promotion across social media platforms, including Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and various industry blogs. Before Diebold, Kelly established a social media program for Bayer Corporation in North America, building strategy and processes from the ground up. Jen Yoakley is the manager of corporate communications for Quicken Loans Arena and brings more than 3 years of experience in developing social media strategy to strengthen and elevate the awareness of brands with customers. She's responsible for developing, collaborating, and executing public relations strategies to increase brand awareness and sales, as well as implementing new social media techniques to enhance fan engagement. Jen and her team also work on marketing, community relations, corporate sales, and organizational initiatives. She also focuses on internal communications, arena, and special event publicity, customer service, and media relations. Got some busy people up here. Luke Armour, you met before, assistant professor and coordinator of Flash Communications at Kent State. He's an educator and digital communications strategist. Luke brings his experience of working at the intersection of online and traditional PR to the classroom at Kent State, where he is currently teaching PR tactics and PR online tactics. A non-tenure track assistant professor at Kent State School of Journalism and Mass Communication, Luke also serves as coordinator of Flash Communications, a student-run PR agency at the University of Communications and Marketing. You'll also be our moderator. So please help me welcome these panelists.
Well, thank you all for being here for this exciting panel. And as Ron said, this is a busy group of people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a couple of general questions to them. We'll talk, and then I'm going to go ahead and open it up to any other questions you may have, and I'll fill in with some questions. So once we get through that part, I'll open it up to you. So be thinking about some questions about how to make social work from your perspective. And you have this panel up here that you can really grill about how they make their social work for them in large organizations. So Ron did a nice job of introducing us all. I feel like I've not had somebody talk about me that long in a while, which is nice. So if you just want to touch on your experience with social media, and I guess we'll start with Scott, and talk about how you're managing that internally. And then if you can talk about who manages your social at your organization.
Sure. Can everyone hear me? I'm the only one who doesn't have one of those. We have a team of 4 people who do content marketing / social media at Cleveland Clinic. That group is part of my team, and I have a dual responsibility, which is brand new, and that is the digital piece, social, mobile, internet, as well as the offline piece. We're merging, essentially, the content across the channels as opposed to thinking of them as a silo. The clinic is a large and complex organization. Most of social is with my group. My group is directly responsible for our Health Hub blog, as well as Facebook, Pinterest, Google+, YouTube, and various other services. Twitter is managed via our public relations, media relations group instead of marketing, but we have a fairly close relationship between them.
And your personal experience with social, do you have a...
Well, like King, I started when I was 12 in this industry, so keep that in mind. But I've been, King, by the way, I don't know how many people truly understand, but King was doing internet and internet marketing back in 1995, 1996, when very few people in Cleveland were actually doing it. He was truly a pioneer in this market, so he's managed to thrive throughout. So I've been doing digital and the like for almost as long as he has, and social for the past 3 or 4 years.
Great. Jen, you want to go?
Is this on? Okay. I guess I can start off with how my experience in social media, and that really began when I was here, and I tweeted as a student, I tweeted as a consumer, and I tweeted to different brands, and if I went on an airplane, I tweeted about that. I tweeted about what I had for breakfast. And getting my first job, even through my internships, they saw a young professional who understood social media as just this golden ticket, and they kind of just threw me into it and saw if I could do it, and I could do it. So I started off doing some of the smaller accounts, whether it was the Lake Erie Monsters or Quicken Loans Arena, and quickly developed myself up to become one of the masterminds behind the Cavs. So I do operate with a team of about eight or nine people, and we work on the Cavs account, Lake Erie Monsters, Canton Charge, Quicken Loans Arena, and the plethora of game entertainment teams that we have. So there's a lot of things moving in our building, and to create that different voice kind of gives you even more experience, because you're talking from the Scream team to the Cavaliers and doing game notes for the Monsters, and it's been 3 very quick years, but I've gotten a lot of experience through social media that way. So.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My background really started similar to Jen as well. I started at my internship at Bear, which is the aspirin company. It's located in Pittsburgh. And I was an intern there, got brought on. They kind of just threw me into the waters and, saw what I could do with it and kind of let me run from there. So after my internship, I stayed on there and continued to develop their digital program and social media. So Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube were our main channels. And then I recently moved back to Ohio about a year ago and I've taken over Diebold social media and their strategy for North America for the most part. That's where we mostly promote all of our content, but also from a global perspective, working with our colleagues in China and Latin America as well. And the way the process flow really works at Diebold is social media resides in corporate communication, but I work very closely with our marketing teams and our marketing communication teams to make sure that the content that we are creating in all these different channels is being promoted and utilized to the best of its ability through all these different channels.
Okay. So my first question, and we'll just start with you, Kelly, talks about listening. We always talk about the importance of listening before you engage in social media. Can you tell us a little about how you as a corporation accomplish this? So do you have tools? How do you report it? Things like that.
So before I started at Diebold, so this was about 3 to 4 years ago, we went through an audit process of beginning to really see what the conversations are out there happening about Diebold, what conversations about our competitors are going on, and really taking all that information and benchmarking and then moving forward from there with our strategy. So now we're at a point where we have all this information, and from a monitoring perspective, we use agency support. Dixon Eaton, they help us, and they do a tremendous job with that. So they provide us with quarterly and monthly reports using Radian 6 to really dive into the conversations that are happening, the sentiment, and then we also do look at our competitors as well and compare Diebold to our competitors as well. But from a daily perspective, it's really me monitoring all of our different channels as much as I can, because social isn't my main role, it's part of my role. I'm also do media relations as well. So having TweetDeck open, having multiple monitors, looking at all the conversations that are happening is really how we handle it.
On our end, I know when I first got there, we were using TweetDeck, and it was more or less kind of just a safety net in case something happens, because at the time there wasn't a lot of customer service issues happening as far as the NBA or an arena concert or anything like that goes. But more and more throughout the years, we've learned that more people are coming to our games or our shows or whatever, or walking by the arena, and tweeting our owner, Dan Gilbert, about some things. So with his profile being so high on social media, which is great, it really has caused us to pay more attention about the conversations happening and making us more aware that whether or not we're participating in it, we need to be listening because people are going to be talking whether we're there or not. So we've not only been listening, but we've also been engaging more in conversations that are happening around us, which has also built our brand a little bit more as in customer service than it necessarily was before, to show people that we are there and we're listening and we've got a lot of eyes on it. So people still tweet, but
Right.
they know that we're there. So
Sorry, one of my favorite sayings is to mine and mind your data, right? If you as a leader, if I as a leader am not looking at our data every day, gaining insights from that data, and then driving decisions based on that data, then I'm not doing my job very well. So within that context, though, we do very little listening through the tools like Radian 6. What we do instead is look at our own sources of data about what's happening on Facebook, on Twitter, on our blog, et cetera, to find out what people are talking about, what people are doing, combining that behavior as well as what people want. We're constantly surveying our users. How many people work on the client side here for companies as opposed to agencies? One of the things we do, and very few people actually do this, is we regularly survey our social followers on Twitter and on Facebook. Number one, to make sure that we're meeting their expectations, doing a good job. But secondly, to figure out, well, exactly what those expectations are. And then we're monitoring in real time. We use a service called Chartbeat to look at, to measure activity on our blog in real time. So we know that when we make a post or a tweet that's intended to get traffic back to our blog, we can see almost immediately whether that's happening or not. I find myself talking with my hands a lot right now. No, that scene in Talladega Nights where Ricky Bobby can't figure out what to do with his hands, you know? That's what I feel like I'm doing right now, so apologize. But we do pay very close attention in real time to that data. In fact, while I was up there in the corner, I was watching what was happening on our site in real time, seeing what was working and what was not working.
Okay, the next big question, and we'll start with Jen. Yeah. So how do you sell the needs or opportunities of social media up the ladder? And I think that's a question that a lot of internal people have, or even agencies have with clients. How do you get those needs and opportunities across in a way that resonates with them, that they give you the green light?
it's actually really funny because they'll buy into the we need a Twitter handle, or we need a Facebook page, or we need to have a tweet up. But the second you bring money into it, a lot of people just kind of they kind of nix you a little bit. And I think a lot of it happens because you're the person behind it and you're running it, and as long as you're pushing out tweets and as long as you're pushing out messaging, they don't really care as long as you're not causing any damage.
And social media is free.
Right,
So
because everything in social media is free.
It's
So
the most expensive free platform you ever have, right?
So I know on our end, it's been not the hardest thing, but it's been pretty difficult to kind of explain the need to invest a little bit of money in it, and kind of to show that our audience is out there and they're talking, and to back that up, not only with Facebook likes or what other teams are doing or anything like that, but valuable statistics. So we need to have those sit-down conversations with our CEOs and our VPs and all of those people at the table, and kind of make it clear not only how important it is, but why they should be investing their money into their product, so to speak.
And do you find at times that you end up going in there with some sort of quantification of what you think is going to happen, or is it just a conversation?
I mean, sometimes we do compare teams. I just said we didn't, but we do. So if we come back and say, Madison Square Garden's doing this, and this is what happened, and look how much success they have, and they'll come back and say, all right, well, what are you going to do? So we do go in there with with some information and data that we've pulled from smaller case studies and smaller contests or smaller campaigns that we've run to show that this is free, so if you put money into it, like, it might go even bigger.
Right.
And sometimes they buy into that, and other times they don't. So it's a constant battle. They don't want to chump up the change for it, but sometimes they do.
Sure. Scott?
I feel actually very fortunate because I work for an organization that is constantly challenging itself and is forward-thinking and is continually looking for the newest, best thing. I also work for an organization that isn't as focused on the short-term gain as much as a for-profit organization might. We tend to take a little bit of a longer view. And we're also much more focused on building brands simply because of how healthcare consumers, quote unquote, purchase our product. There's a very long, we can't create demand for our product. We can't make you want to come to our hospital. We just have to be there ready for you in your consideration set when you do have a problem and you're considering who you want to provide that care to. So it's a little bit of a different model and a little bit of a different challenge overall, and marketing and social fits right into that, right? We look at this very strategically as building brand awareness and brand affinity. Having said all of that, I work for a physician-run organization, and if there's one thing physicians respect more than anything, it's data, right? They're like engineers. Data, data, data. So if you can bring the data, good, relevant data, and tell the story behind it and how that's relevant to the organization, you can be successful.
Kelly?
Yeah, I think I agree with Jen completely. I don't think it's really an issue at my organization. I think leaders are demanding of it and they're eager to have it and, do more with it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to money. And I know that we've talked a lot on like the ROI and things like that. And, to provide a little bit of context for those of you who aren't maybe as familiar with Diebold, we started as a security business and we've evolved over time to an ATM business. So our customers are banks. And the people making those decisions to buy our products and our services and our technology are executives at the banks making those strategic decisions. So our audience really varies. And so having a social media program and they say, tell me the ROI on this, that's not really a part of our strategy at this point. It's more so the brand and the reputation and, becoming thought leaders in that space. So sometimes that's very challenging to sell to leadership, but they understand that social media is definitely needed. And, with the help of monitoring tools and showing the statistics and say, hey, look at what our competitor is doing and, we need to be doing that too, but it's going to take this amount of an investment to get that ROI. And the ROI being, increasing the reputation, our visibility, our thought leadership.
Let me flip that question around real quick before I open it up to the audience. This is a volunteer question. Has it ever been a situation for you where, if you'd like to tell a story, where somebody has come to you and said, we need to do this because somebody else is doing it? And then you've had to think about it and say, well, strategically, this doesn't make sense for us. No. And how did you handle that? Does anybody want to volunteer? Because I think that's a good question.
That happens to me almost every single day.
Okay.
I mean, it's a large organization with a large marketing team, and it's very creative. And as I said, there's a lot of pushing and driving to come up with the latest, greatest, best. So we're constantly receiving help in how we can do our job better and differently. And some of it is on target strategically. Some of it is off target strategically but interesting. And some of it is so far off target that it's not even in the same zip code. So you have to sort of stay focused, but at the same time make yourself available to new, fresh ideas because you never know.
Sure.
You never know.
think the one thing that as you see all of these social platforms and the 5 that I had no idea about this morning that just kept popping up, it kind of throws you into this small bit of anxiety where you're like, oh crap, like I should know about this and we should be on this, and then you kind of take a step back and you're like, I don't know if it really makes a difference. But we faced that a couple of times, especially over the summer when we have some free time on our hands and we start thinking ahead and strategy-wise. And we often have people come up to us and say, you need to be on this, and you should be on Pinterest, and you should be on this. And we sit around the table and we kind of balance it out and say, is it worth, our time? Because all of us are doing it on top of another job. Our digital team is managing the website and the web properties. I'm doing public relations and media relations and whatever else they throw. And so to throw that on there, and sometimes it comes from leadership, sometimes it comes from interns. I remember someone told us that we should be doing Snapchat, and I had no idea what it was at first, and then they showed me, and I kind of got creeped out, and then I walked through it. But they constantly are being thrown around, and everyone thinks it's the next big thing. So to take a step back and just to kind of evaluate, is it worth your time and is it worth your efforts? And sometimes it is, and sometimes it's not. So.
Yeah, I think, going off of that, I think it's very important to kind of think about the resources and time that it takes. So if leadership or someone in the organization, looks at our accounts and says like, oh, that we could be doing so much more, they don't understand, what all goes into having this, because they're not on the front lines, they're not creating it. It takes a lot of effort and time, and we have to be strategic with it and not just throw stuff out there. And like, our competitors are in our market, but they also are in different markets, so they see what they're doing, but it's more of B2C than B2B. So you kind of just have to stick with your gut, and you know that you're making the right decisions, and work with your team and your colleagues to really make the best decisions.
Can I add one more thing
Sure.
to that? We use a tool called Zoom Social. It's ZUUM Social. And what Zoom does from a Facebook perspective is it goes out and you can identify your competitive set. And we have a top 10 list that we compare ourselves to. And it goes out and it scrapes the data from those competitors and brings it back to us, so we can, on a daily basis, again in more or less real time, compare our performance on Facebook to others. But not just performance, we can also see what's working and what's not working for our competitors as well. So we've leveraged a lot of ideas that some of our competitors have had as well. So we're constantly using those kinds of tools to look and see what others are doing.
Okay, I'm going to open it up, and I can either get the mic or you can shout it to me, and I'll make sure everybody else can hear it if somebody has a question for the panel. Anyone? Right here.
I work for Davy Tree in Kent, just like 2 seconds away, and we actually have a bunch of local offices around the U.S. and Canada, and been approached before from managers in those offices asking if they can create their own Facebook page for their individual office, and we kind of struggle with ways to explain to them, why we would prefer to just refer consumers to the one brand Facebook page that we already have. So would you have any advice on how to explain that to them?
Let me synthesize that question as best I can. Did anybody not hear that? Okay, so she said she works for Davy Tree, and they have numerous offices, and the numerous offices are trying to ask if they can also set up Facebook pages for just those offices, right? Am I right? And she's asking for advice on how to tell them no, possibly, because sometimes it's easier just to refer them to one branded Facebook page. And maybe you agree or disagree. Does anybody want to tackle that one?
I think I could take this one because we run into this all the time. First off, it sounds pretty simple, but we have a form that anybody who wants to do anything on social has to fill out. And that form asks them a lot of information. It asks them who the standard kind of marketing questions. Who's your target audience, blah, 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 blah. But it also asks for who's going to manage this, what's your editorial strategy, What we're really looking for are you going to manage it well? And are we going to come back 6 months from now and find that you haven't posted for 3 months? You were all excited for 2 months, and then events of the day took over. That's number one. And number two, we want to make sure that there's a reason for you to have this, aside from the enterprise page. Is there a legitimate marketing reason? Is your target audience dramatically different, right? So dramatically different that you have to speak to them differently. If you're just going to create another Facebook page and say the same things that you're saying in the enterprise page, well, then that's a stupid idea. Particularly when you can geo-target your posts on Facebook. So there's really no reason why somebody in Canada should have its own page, because you can target your posts there. So it's got to be strategically relevant, and you have to be able to manage it. We have allowed, our CMO's approach is one Cleveland Clinic. We should be speaking as one brand, but we have allowed social expressions to go out that are uniquely designed. Our children's hospital has its own Facebook page because they have to speak differently with different types of content to their audience than we would if we're trying to cover all of our specialties. So I would have that kind of, I'd make them fill out a form. I'd create a process that says all of these requests need to go to our CMO for approval. This is not my call. This is a C-suite call, right? And have them fill out that form and then have that conversation with your CMO and review and advise and let them deal with that as opposed to you.
Okay, agreement. Christine, did you have a question?
I was just curious how you might be using social media in crisis communications realm.
The question was, how do you use social media in the crisis communications realm?
I know in our world, a broken cup holder or they can't find a stadium mustard or something. It's pretty small.
That's a true crisis, right?
It's a true crisis, especially during a game night for us. But I know that that's a small little grain in the spectrum of life. But for us, no matter what it is, we try to get everything offline. If a guest has an issue or if there's something happening that we need to have a further discussion with someone, we definitely want to either talk to them over the phone, we want to go through email. It's just, to blast out that message to thousands and thousands of followers isn't necessarily something that we do. That said, I know that, I think it was Shell that talked earlier about sometimes it's just good not to say anything at all. And sometimes we also have to do that. Going off of that, we've had a pretty rough season, and so that in itself is a crisis. But we keep it very straightforward. We keep it very professional. We don't get involved with people spamming our Facebook pages or saying things that we should not be responding to. So it's very important to keep your head up and keep constant communication with the people, the VPs and the presidents and everyone that kind of needs to be in the know about that kind of stuff. Because I know it happens very often that the wrong person gets in touch of the Twitter account or the Facebook page or whatever, and they let their emotions fly, and that's when the crisis becomes a major issue.
Yeah, I agree with that definitely. I think, monitoring is the most important part of that, and picking and choosing your battles, because there will be things, not really crisis at a specific event, but, we'll get posts on our Facebook about, things that happened at an ATM that really are out of our control and might be more so related to the financial institution. So we just have to, just continually monitor that and make sure it doesn't catch fire, get out of hand, and at that point, then we would step in. But everyone is always kept in the loop at all times about what's going on in that space.
Other questions? In the back?
My question is for Cleveland Clinic. You said you
Well, good question. You want to?
The question was, how is the clinic pulling their audiences to make sure they're staying on message for what they're looking for from that channel?
There's a set of demographic, psychographic questions we ask. The sort of standard survey questions about age and income and geographic location. But we're also looking for what types of things are you looking for from us? So we ask them in the latest survey, which we did in December, we do this for Facebook and for Twitter, slightly different surveys. But we ask them, we give them a list of different types of topics, and so what do you want? What do you want to hear from us? That's a big part. How satisfied are you? How likely are you to recommend what we do? How likely are you to share what we do? But the most insightful part for us, that's just scorecarding, right? We want to make sure that we are moving the needle for consumers. But the most insightful for us is, well, what are you expecting from it? Why did you join us? What are you expecting from us? And what we found is that people want health and wellness information. They want the latest in medical innovation from us. And they want information about the condition that they are themselves facing. Every one of our followers on Twitter or Facebook, and every one of us really, has some sort of health issue. And that health issue could be something fairly as benign as I want to lose a few pounds, or I wish I could stop eating that donut for lunch, or something very serious, like heart disease. So they're looking for, they want to be validated, right? They want to know that the Cleveland Clinic is thinking about them and talking about them and providing services to them, right? They want to have their everyday life improved, health and wellness tips. Tell me what I should be eating today to make me healthier, right? They want hope. So they want to hear about the studies that we are performing, and so that one day what they have can be cured, and they want to be cured. The sickest patients in the world come to Cleveland Clinic, right? So we offer solutions that maybe they cannot get at their local hospital. So if they see something that we are talking about, they might say, oh, wow, I never knew that was possible. I have that problem. My doctor never told me about that. I'm going to pick up the phone and call Cleveland Clinic. So that's what we're learning. That kind of deep insight is what we're learning from consumers, not just from our survey, but from, we did a follow-up question. We said, all right, you want to hear about conditions? What specifically do you want to hear about, right? Is it mitral valve repair? Is it COPD? Is it lupus? Is it other kinds of autoimmune deficiencies? What do you want to hear about? And we had almost 1,000 responses to that. Put it all on a spreadsheet, added it all up, and that is influencing our editorial calendars in terms of what we're talking about.
I just want to ask you to follow up. Do you leverage audience feedback to, like, for instance, to change your editorial calendar? I mean, obviously, Jen, you would have seasons, so you have a ton of things you got to kind of ride as they go through. I mean, is there anything you can anticipate or you can gather feedback from and kind of spit back in a way that is palatable to the audiences?
We don't necessarily send out something like a survey, but it's an amazing idea, especially for our season ticket holders and stuff like that. But I know for our end, we do a lot of analysis in the off season, and especially in the build up for the preseason, to decide what worked well and what didn't. We use a lot of Google Analytics to see website traffic and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff to see what drives traffic, where they're coming from, if it's Facebook or Twitter, and where our audience is. When they tweet during the game is also very important because that knows For a sponsorship thing, when do we need to put our sponsors in that game to get their attention? Are they tweeting during the game, or are they tweeting during timeouts? Are they tweeting during pregame, or all that kind of stuff? So we do a lot of it's super boring, but it's a lot of just analysis over the past season and what we can do better to move forward. So luckily, I don't have to be there today to do that.
Yeah, we do the same thing as well. Just tracking analytics behind what works on the different channels, what received positive feedback. So it's different in a type of industry that what we're working with. So I always have to keep in mind that while our customers are financial institutions, I have to always keep in mind of the consumer and the other perspective, because that's where the engagement comes from, and that's where the interest is derived, and that's where we can see big results. So I think that, that's the kind of insight that we like to see. And then, we post more pictures to Facebook and, showing how our technology is changing the way consumers bank is what's most interesting to our audiences.
I do want to add one more thing. The next survey we do, the question that is most on my mind is related back to our standard objective, and that is brand awareness and brand affinity, right? So the question that is on my mind that we will be asking users next time, because we've added about 350,000 Facebook followers over the last 6 months. What I want to know is, have we changed their perception of Cleveland Clinic? Did they know about us before they liked us, right? And if they did or did not, what is their perception of Cleveland Clinic now compared to what it was before? That's the bottom line. So that's a question we haven't asked before. And I'm kicking myself because that's the critical question, right? Have we changed their perception? Or have we given them a new perception, or a perception at all that they never had before? And that's what we're going to be asking.
Other questions? Ron?
This is for Scott, but it might also be for Debo. You're opening a big facility in Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
What will be the social media platform there? Have you made a study of what the worldwide, international differences and so forth?
The question is, the Cleveland Clinic's opening a branch in Dubai, and what kind of social media implications or what kind of channels we'll be using? Have you done some research on that kind of global?
Right. It's actually in Abu Dhabi, which is in that same general area. But what it is, it's a huge medical center in Abu Dhabi that we are running, but we do not own. It is the government there is actually building it, but we are sort of the managing partner. All of the leadership there is Cleveland Clinic leadership. It is such a unique environment that, frankly, I know zero about. Never been there, haven't the foggiest idea what it would take to be successful there. So we have hired marketing people and social media people in market. And what we do, we meaning Cleveland Clinic and the main enterprise, is just providing them with tools and advice about what the Cleveland Clinic brand is about and how we operate at the enterprise level, and coach them up in that regard. But ultimately, those people on the ground need to come up with their own strategy, what tools to use and how to use them. It would be a disaster if I tried to do it because I've never been. So that's one case, to the earlier question, where it would be foolish for us to say, no, you can't have unique social expressions because we have the enterprise. We can't speak to that audience in a way that will resonate with them as well as they could in that local market. So we're basically giving them some free rein.
Kelly, do you have a global perspective on that?
Yeah, that's Diebel's same approach as well. I mean, I work with our colleagues in China and Latin America to kind of establish and begin a presence. It's very new. With over the past year, it's been established, but I am not well versed in, their market and their language and just all of the different tools because it varies. China isn't allowed to have the tools that we have here. So I just act as a counsel and support and overall governance of the channel and making sure that they have a plan in place and an objective. And from there, we just work together to make sure it's seamless and that we're showing up the right way.
And the one thing I do know about that market, it is that it is a very mobile, smartphone-centric market, much more so than the States, simply because they did not have the landline infrastructure. They just sort of jumped right into mobile. It is a huge, and that drives a lot of your decision-making digitally, right? We are, I would say, a little bit behind when it comes to mobile, but everything about what we are doing right now is going to change over the next couple of years simply because of these little devices right now that we all have. We've seen our mobile traffic on our website, which gets about 4 million visits a month. We've seen mobile traffic over the last couple of years go from 0% to 30-35%. And that's going to grow even more significantly over the next couple of years. I wouldn't be surprised that within 2 or 3 years that it's 80-90% of our traffic is mobile. And that should drive decision-making around what you do and how you do it throughout your platform.
Jen, I have a question for you. Is there anything you're doing to leverage the live audiences at the events? I mean, is there something you're doing to take advantage of that real-time thing as we talked about earlier?
Yeah, actually, well, I guess I can kind of get off the basketball thing for a while, because we also do concerts. But I know for us, we like to team up with the performer that's coming into town. Obviously, Pink would have more followers than we hope, maybe someday will. But we work with them to kind of develop something, whether it's a hashtag or whether it's a conversation piece, or I know we're working right now on takeovers to see if like the artist can take over the account for a day or something. But we work with people who are coming into town to come up with different strategies or contests or ideas to leverage the event, to leverage that conversation. It's already going to be happening, but if you can put a hashtag on it, if you can kind of put like a little Curina capstone on it, that'd be ideal in our world.
Sure. Kelly, I'm going to ask you and Scott, do you have any regulatory things that you've had to overcome that would be important for people who work in a regulatory industry or have clients? So Kelly, do you want to tackle that one?
So like, maybe.
Well, do you have any like security questions or,
Okay.
Like proprietary information or SEC things or anything like that?
Yeah, so our social media policy with proprietary information, we just created we revised our existing one that was established in 2008, which as you can imagine was extremely outdated. But it took a while because of the National Labor Relations. They have, they've eased the reins a lot. So what we have in our policy around that is very loose. Like you can't be like, you can't say this or that. But I mean, we have guidelines around proprietary information that we can't disclose. And then we're also working with our security team very closely with everything, and monitoring has a huge role in that as well. But from an SEC perspective, the new ruling is very cool and changing the way, obviously, that we're communicating, especially in the social sphere and with investor-related type information. Do I think that we would move in that direction from our company's perspective? Probably not anytime soon.
And there you're talking about the SEC allowing you to
Yes.
use social media to post material information.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So that was a big ruling, but I don't see us really moving in that direction, but it's certainly an option. It's certainly something that's cool and will continue to evolve, probably more so for other companies. So yeah.
Scott, I mean, like HIPAA comes to mind when I think
Yeah,
of the clinic.
that's our number one issue is HIPAA. It's protecting the privacy of our patients. And the first thing we did before we started with social media is develop a policy. And put that policy on our websites, but also communicate it internally. That's really the only regulatory issue that we have to deal with on a consistent basis. And the biggest problem that we have is the unintentional violations of HIPAA by our employees. Very benign. Here's a perfect example. Last fall, we had one of our employees, there was an event in the lobby of one of our buildings on main campus in Cleveland. And it was a performance, musical performance, and so there were hundreds of people, patients, and their families in the lobby of this, of our building watching this performance. And one of our employees, thinking how wonderful of an event this was, took pictures and uploaded them, posted them on our wall. Well, these pictures had people's faces in them, right? It didn't say, oh, this person is Joe Smith, but it had people's faces in them. This woman, she didn't mean anything. She didn't mean any harm. She was trying to be supportive, and we had to take the photos down and very nicely sent her a note, reminding her that those kinds of things we just can't do, simply because somebody could see that and say, oh, I didn't know, Joe was going to the clinic. I wonder what's wrong with Joe. So it's so that's really the critical problem that we have. But I'll tell you what, as long as we get people who will tell us just about anything on Facebook, and I think you used the phrase this morning. There's things that you see that you can never unsee.
Right.
And so we get a lot of that, and I don't know why you would want to share that information for all to see, but we do get people doing that.
To add to that, I think one of the most important things when you're developing a social media program is to make sure your employees or associates are educated, because working for a global company, we have approximately 17,000 associates across the world, and they have their social media accounts, and they may not realize that this is a threat for the company, or this is a risk for the company. So they could be sitting at their desk with a whiteboard in the background with proprietary information on it and take a picture, and they don't realize, like, oh, that's in the background, or they don't have the attention to detail that we would freak out on if we saw that on Twitter or something like that. So I think the most important thing is, just educating them, letting them know maybe some examples like this. And one of the things that Diebold does is we have a security awareness week, and it touches upon all different aspects of security, but one of the sessions is about social media. And so just making sure that they're aware and just continually educating them, maybe with internal communications around, hey, don't do this, or hey, watch out for this. For an example, months ago, I received a tweet from a guy, and it was a picture message on a plane, and one of our executives was flying, and he had his tablet out, and it had passwords written on it. And so some guy tweeted a picture from behind him saying, like, Diebold, someone on the plane, Diebold, and he has a folder with passwords. So, things like that, thankfully we were aware of it, and, we were able to identify the person and all that. And then from there we have internal communications around, watch out for this. You should be cognizant of, your surroundings when you're in close quarters, and just, all together, because social media takes those types of incidents and makes them larger, and then that causes, bigger threats and risks for the company. So it's just all about education.
I couldn't help but notice that somebody wants extra credit for attending. Can I get extra credit too? While we're at it, I want extra credit. You're going to give them extra credit?
We'll see. We'll see how many of them are still here after the wrap up.
It must be so painful that they want extra credit.
No, they're shaking their heads no now.
No.
Now they're denying it. I have time for one more question from the audience. So, anyone? I have one right here. Otherwise, yes, Chris.
You mentioned
can't even synthesize that question. So how do you just answer it?
You want to summarize that one for anyone?
It'll take us all the rest of the time for me to repeat what he said, but
How long did it take you to think of that one?
He's been saving that up for the last 45 minutes. We do approve them. We've got a Children's Hospital Facebook page. We've got we will soon have an Abu Dhabi social experience. We've got a Cleveland clinic in your community, a very hyper-local Facebook expression. So there are those things that exist. And what we try to, when we make that decision, to go back what I earlier said, is you have to have a unique audience that you have to speak to unique, right? And therefore, your tactics and your approach needs to be different than the enterprise, right? We are speaking on the enterprise level, we're speaking to a global audience. 70 to 75% of our traffic to our website comes from outside the state of Ohio. And roughly that many people are coming from outside the state of Ohio and following us on Facebook and Twitter. So the way we speak to them is going to be different than the way you would speak to somebody who lives in South Euclid, right? And the kind of information you give to them is going to be different. And the kind of conversations you have are going to be different. So I think you need to keep in mind, obviously, that you have a brand that you have to protect, but you also need to reflect the fact that you're going to let that brand speak in slightly different ways to slightly different audiences.
Jen?
I think as far as our different teams and our different platforms go, we have a similar voice, but like you said, I mean, every account has to be at least slightly different because the whole reason it's there is because you have a different audience. So the difference between the Cavs and Quicken Loans Arena is completely different because, yes, we host basketball at the Q, but we also host family shows from Disney on Ice to Britney Spears. So that's a completely different audience to Taylor Swift. And it's kind of funny because the Cavs have such strict regulations on what they can and cannot tweet, and on the Q side, which I get to have fun with, we can kind of play around and do different things and not worry so much about getting in. Let me take that back. Getting in trouble. About league regulations or things we can and cannot say about players or coaches and all that kind of stuff. So we each have a different voice, and sometimes it's hard to bounce back and forth between the accounts and kind of vary between hockey talk and basketball talk and concert talk. But in the grand scheme of things, we're all under the same owner, we're all under the same company, so we all kind of still have to have that same voice going out and energy and excitement. So.
The biggest problem we have is that people want that these other social platforms want to do what we're doing at the enterprise level, right? And they're trying to emulate us, and we have to tell them, no, that's not what we want you to do. There's a reason why you have your page, right? If you're just going to do the same thing that we're doing, then there's no point in you having that page. We could just do that from the enterprise. So you have to be different, or else there's no reason for you to be.
And that sometimes is a very difficult conversation to have, and going back to the Davy Tree stuff is everyone wants to put their stuff out on Facebook, and everyone wants to have that big, great page. And sometimes you have to have that discussion that it's about the bigger picture and it's about the brand, not necessarily the ego, which is, again, a pretty hard conversation to have sometimes. And we've done the same thing with with some accounts that we've had.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Diebold's approach for the time being is really to have streamlined accounts. For the most part, what we're speaking about is relatively all under the same umbrella. But when I worked at Bayer, there were a bunch of different markets. So we had, the healthcare side. They have an animal health. They have a crop science. So that made sense to have different accounts. But I think one of the really important things is when you do have to have these tough conversations with people internally about why we can't make a specific account or a specific page to this, you have to work closely with them to identify their needs. And I think there will become a better understanding if you work closely and maybe figure a way out to make them feel like they are a part of the success, because in the end, that's why they want it. They want to be able to share their success and what they're doing. So if you allow them to, work with them to have that kind of freedom and collaborate and do that things, I think it will make it, internally much more easy, and the conversation will go much better.
Okay, any final thoughts from the panel before we wrap up? And we're actually over time, but I just want to make sure that if you have any of the last things you want to say, please share them.
Good.
I'm good.
Good.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. At 3:15, we'll have our last session, and that will be a wrap-up of the day, everything you've learned. It'll be a panel featuring Kevin Dugan, Amy Martin, and Heidi Mondarelli Frank. So join us back in this room. We'll wait till people get out of the other session. So at 3:15, we'll be back in this room. Thank you.